Hello, we're here at Sony Picture Studios in Culver City, California to celebrate Ghostbusters, one of my favorite movies, probably one of yours as well. Today we're here with the director Ivan Reitman. We're here with co-writer and star Dan Aykroyd to talk about a movie that made us laugh, spooked us a little bit, and keeps us coming back for more. Ghostbusters is a movie that seems as alive and well today as when you guys made it. Mr. Ivan Reitman, Dan Aykroyd. Let's talk a little bit about Ghostbusters today. When you guys look back on this movie, what do you see? How does it echo for you?
I'll let the boss go first.
Well, this is the real boss. It feels great. Look, it was one of my favorite sort of professional experiences ever. It was really one of my favorite personal experiences. The writing process with Harold and Dan and the shooting in New York. It was a remarkable time. The city was very generous with us. We were all feeling good, and we had a sense really from the very first day that we were doing something unique.
Sure. You know, you mentioned New York, and there's that classic image in my mind of the Ghostbusters running down the street in New York. That's what I think of. It really was about the city and that time, wasn't it, Dan?
Well, the city is a character in the film. We were successful in conveying that. It was the Reagan years, of course, one political analyst said it was the perfect movie for the Reagan years because our opposition was the EPA. Here we were, we were new entrepreneurs, a startup company, if you will, and we were contravening environmental laws. So nothing politically correct there about the Ghostbusters, and it very much hewed to the time in terms of what was going on in the city in the 70s, the Dinkins cock cheers.
Sure. You know, and looking around here, we're obviously surrounded by the iconography of this franchise. Ivan, you were saying, too, it looks different to you. It looks different than when you first saw it.
Well, I was just looking at the Ectomobile, and I remember how complex it seemed when we first had it on the street, and we saw it all decked out, probably in a live environment. Here, because we're on a stage, in a Hollywood stage, you know, its artificiality or its sort of uniqueness doesn't sort of stand out quite the same way it did 30 years ago as it drove downtown, where it was remarkable. People stopped and started looking at it right away because, of course, no one had ever heard of the movie. So there wasn't any of the familiarity that exists today.
And talking about the way that, you know, it's lightning in a bottle. I mean, there were so many things. I mean, there was the imagery, the logo, the cast, the script, the everything, and the place, the music. There were so many things. Were you prepared for how big it got?
I had just come from JFK to pick up, believe it or not, Bill Murray, who was arriving. It was a week before shooting began, but we were also doing some camera tests that day and also wardrobe tests. And for the wardrobe test, I thought, well, let's just shoot one of those sort of montage pieces when they first become Ghostbusters. And it's at first the three Ghostbusters just running down the streets in their uniforms. It was Madison Avenue around 61st. And I sort of just look up and I see them for the first time, and I got this amazing shiver up my spine. And I said, wow, that's a fabulous image. I didn't even know why it was special, but I just had the sense at that moment that we were doing something that was going to work.
Dan, for you, what was it like that day, or wearing the gear? And
you know, I sort of, I knew that the look of the thing was going to be cool. I guess it was, you know, Billy and I used to go home for lunch because I lived right above Columbia there in the valley, and I could be at the studio within 8 minutes. So we used to go home to lunch sometimes, and I guess we were having lunch, and Billy was, you know, looking out over my pool, and we were just sitting there, and you know, and feeling really fortunate to be doing what we were doing. And he said, you know, we've all got something really, really special here. I remember driving back to the studio and thinking, wow, if he's admitting to this, you know, because his bullshit detector is really high, then we probably do have something that's gonna work on a big way.
We are on the threshold of establishing the indispensable defense science of the next decade: professional paranormal investigations and eliminations. The franchise rights alone will make us rich beyond our wildest dreams.
Look around us today. I mean, not only do we have the films and that they're alive and well within the public mind, but the comic books, the video games, the gear, and the inflatable Stay Puft Man right there that I'm going to take home with me, I think.
Someone's going to fight you for that.
Tell us a little bit about the Stay Puft Man. How did we find him?
You know, Dan's the real genius behind all of this. He wrote a script called Ghostbusters for himself and John Belushi. How long ago was that, Dan?
Yeah, late 81 really was when I really started to write it, in late 81, yeah.
And of course, John exited our universe, and it just languished for a little bit, and I think you sent it to me. I think at some point you spoke to Bill about perhaps picking up the mantle, and he sent it to me. And there was a lot of effects. It would have cost about $300 million in 1984, I think, to make this film. But there was these brilliant things. There was, at its heart, this wonderful central idea that here are a group of guys sort of operating much like firemen, but instead of putting out fires, they were catching, you know, supernatural things. And I think the idea of the fire hall was there, the no ghost symbol, this wonderful thing, you know, was right in the script that Danny sent me. And amongst the 100-odd special effects monsters that were there was something called the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And I mean, it happened on page 20 or 30, and it was just really one of many things.
Yeah, it definitely was hewing more towards, you know, the underworld, that type of franchise. And I think we were right to lighten it up. And, well, what happened at Art Stelly in our first meeting was you said, how about bringing Ramis aboard to write? And, of course, you know, would he do it? Of course, I was most welcome to that concept. And then the first time that Ramis sat down to talk about it, he was fully conversant with that, with all of the original material that was going through my mind when I wrote the first script, which is, you know, the history of mediumship. He knew who Madame Blavatsky was, the psychics. He knew the Fox sisters were. He was aware of all these names of Swedenborg, of all the spiritualism, the spiritualist movement at the turn of the century. Also, Zecharia Sitchin and ancient biblical myths. And so his frame of reference was massive, and he got all the references. He knew in the original script, he knew what I was trying to do there by bringing in the vernacular and the real science of the paranormal into a comedy. So, although he did not believe in the afterlife, he did have a great sense of who the operators were in spiritualism at the turn of the century, from Conan Doyle to Crookes and Lodge and all the scientists who were researching consciousness after death. Harold knew all about him.
This is big, Peter. This is very big. There's definitely something here.
Egon, this reminded me of the time you tried to drill a hole through your head. Remember that?
That would have worked if you hadn't stopped me.
What else can you tell us about Harold and this project and just sort of the spirit he brought to it?
I saw him not only as a writer, but as an actor. I produced a show off Broadway called The National Lampoon Show with Bill Murray, Gilda Radner, Brian Doyle Murray, and Harold Ramis, and who am I leaving out? Somebody very famous, John Belushi. And this is prior to Saturday Night Live. And what I remember from that show is that Harold Ramis was every much as capable as all these wonderfully later to become famous people. And it's the reason I put him in Stripes. You know, he helped write Stripes. So it was natural. We were talking about Ghostbusters right after Stripes, and I thought he would be an extraordinary help in the writing. And also, he would be this sort of wonderful, odd duck in this trio of guys that then later becomes a quartet.
It wouldn't have been the movie that it became without Harold, no doubt about it, you know. Again, his intelligence, the breadth of knowledge that he had about quantum physics and spiritualism and myth, all the way through the material, his knowledge came into
and he took to that
use.
character. That Egon character was so perfect for him.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember him trying on that sort of, I think it's a 1940s jacket that our costume designer found, and that was it. He never took it off with the vest, and then we added that great haircut, and he just, you know, brought himself, because he's not like that, really. But there's a part of him that's like that, and he was able to really create this very original character.
Egon, I'm going to take back some of the things I said about you.
The Steadicam at that point was cutting edge. That was your first work with it?
In a film like this, I thought it was very important to shoot effective masters, where you see many of the characters in the scene work together. One of the remarkable things about watching these guys is how good they are together. And it's wonderful to see them in a performance where you don't just have to edit to each one. There's a real power to watching one of them do it and see the reaction shot on still in the frame and the other two guys doing something as well. And I felt the film should have a real fluid look to it. And Laszlo Kovacs was our cameraman, one of the great cameramen ever. He's no longer with us, unfortunately, and he just did this wonderful job and was able to meld. You know, we did front of the lens mats through glass, which really people haven't used very much of in a long time. And we had puppets being sort of included into live action stuff, and it all worked pretty damn good for 1984.
And it looks good now. I mean, in the same way that Star Wars looks good and Wizard of Oz, movies that have a complete and interior statement about their universe feels complete and whole. I mean, the movie feels true to itself, so it ages very well.
Yeah, and John DeCure, who was the production designer, I think we worked with him. By the time I worked with John DeCure Sr., he was in his 80s. I think he was nominated 18 times for Academy Awards. I think the last of which was Hello, Dolly, or one of those great musicals. He built Cleopatra about 8 times. This whole idea of what that rooftop would work with the gates that open really came out of his extraordinary imagination. And we started building our writing around things that came from him, where I would present, you know, to Harold and Dan, look, this is kind of rooftop. We added 8 stories to the building that's actually there at 65th and Central Park West. And even the use of the dogs, those dog statues and all the gargoyles, that sort of iconic visualizations in the movie, sort of all developed quickly as we were building in pre-production for the film.
And it's such a sense of scale, too.
Yeah,
You know?
the scale, because he was the guy who did Cleopatra, so he was bringing some of that there.
And it was that transitional moment where analog special effects were shifting over to digital special effects. Most of our effects, virtually all the effects, were analog. Many of them were done live on the set, which was very helpful to the performers, and I think we got a lot of extra humor from it as well, because the actors had something really real to play with.
Yeah.
And I bombarded them with wind and wetness and slime, and you know, so they were constantly in a kind of physical situation beyond just sort of playing the scene.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass. Did you see it? What is it? We got it! What is it? Will there be any more of them?
Sir, what you had there was what we refer to as a focused, non-terminal repeating phantasm, or a class 5 full roaming vapor. Real nasty one, too.
There's the script, there's the actor, and then there's performance, you know, the triangle of it and where those connect. What's the character that seems the most different on the screen than on the page? Who was maybe the performer that took the character into a most surprising direction?
Well, I guess you got to say Murray. You know, I mean, we had the script, it was there, but...
But you guys knew Murray's voice. We all knew Murray's voice. We'd all worked with him. And I'd say...
He brought it, yeah.
Oh, he brings an extraordinary amount of topspin and sort of adds his own stuff.
I guess also Lewis, too, you know. Moranis did a beautiful job. Words are just words there, and then with what he did with them, you know, he's as vital to the success and the appeal of the movie as any one of the Ghostbusters. Moranis is in there as a major pillar of the story and of the way it turned out.
In terms of shifting from the original screenplay, though, the original screenplay, I don't know if you remember, we wrote it for John Candy. I remember sending it to Candy because I had just worked with him again on Stripes, and John didn't get it. He kept saying, hey, well, maybe, can I do him with a German accent? And I was a little hesitant right away. I said, it's kind of an odd thing. It's a very American, New York-based movie. And he was looking for a handle, and we got into the very uncomfortable conversation, and finally, it was clear that he was not going to do it. And I literally called Rick Moranis the same day and sent him the script the same day that Candy had turned it down. And Rick called me like 2 hours after he got it, and he said, please thank Candy for turning this down. This is amazing. I know what to do with this.
I was just exercising. I taped 20-minute workout on my machine and played it back at high speed, so it only took 10 minutes. I got a great workout.
Good.
You want to come in for a mineral water or something?
Oh, I'd really like to, Louis, but I have to go to rehearsal now. Excuse me.
No sweat.
So much of the movie is Rick. He holds up a whole part of it. His strength and his power as a performer is absolutely vital. It would be like, you know, the Ecto without a transmission if it weren't.
Yeah.
If he weren't in there.
It's interesting that he could be so feckless but so likable. You know, like the audience loves him.
Yeah.
Even though the character comes across.
That's what the great comic performers have, that sort of, they take us with them wherever they go, even when they go into some relatively dark, black place.
Sure.
I think what's special about these guys, they're the smartest guys in the room. Even when they're acting silly or when they're making mistakes.
Are you, Alice, menstruating right now?
What has that got to do with it?
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
Ray, it's moving. Come on.
There's something about high intelligence working in a kind of big physical way, in a physical comedy that is very endearing to our audience.
Yeah, it helps the center hold, too. I mean, as far as, like, it feels like there's something to learn or have fun with as it goes along.
We thank Harold for the elevated tone of a lot of it. And also the tradition at Second City of always just trying to be at the top of your intelligence, and then maybe you're going to reach the bottom of someone else's.
Everything was fine with our system until the power grid was shut off by Dickless here.
They caused an explosion. Is this true?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
What were some of the things that you would circle as you look back now as the challenge and opportunity of this movie?
You know, the first challenge was how it got made and how quickly it got made, and how everyone involved from the creative side of it to the studio to the special effects team really took this huge gamble and leap. I really sort of did a 10-line pitch of the movie. There was the earlier draft, but it was really not true to what the movie was going to be that we were all setting off to make at that moment. And so I pitched that movie that was yet to be on paper. And I remember Frank Price asking, well, how much do you think it'll cost? And of course, I had no idea what it was going to cost. Stripes had cost $10 million, so I multiplied that by 3, and I said, well, 30, really just pulling the number out of thin air. And they said, okay, we'll do that. And I suddenly realized, oh, they're going to make this movie, and they just said yes. And he said, we'll make it with the cast that you just mentioned, and but you have to have it ready, I think it was June 9th or 10th, 1984. And so that was 13 months after that moment. There was no screenplay. There was no, we had the cast, and we had a brilliant idea, but there was no special effects team. You know, there was one great special effects house, Industrial Light and Magic, and it was already tied up doing the new Spielberg movie. And so we knew we couldn't go to them, and we had to create our own. Columbia actually fronted $5 million to Richard Edlund, and he started his own Boss Films, I think it was called, and it was the start of his own special effects house that was exclusively working on Ghostbusters.
Wow.
My favorite time on this whole movie, frankly, was when the three of us, Dan, Harold, and I went to Martha's Vineyard. We each had a house. Aykroyd was already living there. And we spent, I think, 2.5 weeks around the July 4th weekend and basically hammered out this new draft of the script.
In my basement, so we wouldn't look out at the sea, with an old Royal Electric typewriter.
And it was just constantly being rewritten, re-edited, re-commented on. And really, by the time we left there, which was about the 10th of July, we had a pretty good script. It wasn't the script we shot, but it was enough of a script for us to sort of say, well, we need this character, we need that character down the hall, we need a woman. And, you know, I could start auditioning people. And while the rewriting continued. And we were shooting the movie in October, and it came out in June.
And then as far as music, just like special effects, music is also a character, just like New York is a character. Music in this film, I mean, there's the great pop hit everybody knows, and then also there's Elmer Bernstein.
Yeah, people, what's interesting, again, retrospectively, when you look back 30 years, In 1984, the Ray Parker hit was the #1 hit in the country for that year, and it's what people remembered. But really, when you watch the movie again, what's really resonant for viewers is Elmer Bernstein's remarkable score. I remember when he played me the very first main theme using the On Martineau, which is a 19th century keyboard instrument that sounds very much like a Moog synthesizer. And it's played in the vibrato of that high, sort of very spiritual, ghostly-like sound. And there's great weight in the score as well. I mean, he was a composer that really knew how to use a brass section and orchestrate for it. And all that weight sort of comes together to make these scenes really serious. And so by the time we're on top of that building in the last act, it's really working. I remember watching it in those first screenings with audiences. They were really enthralled in a way that frankly surprised me, because I was always thinking of the comedy and how that was going to work. And really what made me feel really good as a director is that how emotionally involved and how frankly frightened the audience was at a certain point.
Yeah.
There was a real good old-fashioned classic Hollywood score with a full orchestra doing it.
Who are you guys?
We're the Ghostbusters.
Who does your taxes?
Something like this, because it means so much to so many people, it must come back to you in different ways from the fans. I imagine you both have had some interesting conversations or been approached by people.
Well, I have a beverage alcohol business. I sell the vodka in the Skull, the Crystal Head vodka in the Skull. Just as Brittany would go to sign CDs or have John Grisham signs books, I sign bottles. And I go to liquor stores all over North America, all over the world, really, and I've signed bottles. Everywhere I go, there will be an ecto will show up with between 5 and 25 Ghostbusters in full rig. They're usually men between the age of 25 and 45. They bring their girlfriends or wives who are not in uniform but photograph them with me. And then you'll get some of them bringing their kids. And now you're starting to see even smaller, like infant in the Ghostbusters jumpsuits, the little tiny little
the onesies.
Baby suits, the onesies. So you have the grandkids now of original Ghostbusters viewers out there being invested in the story and the fantasy of it. It's both humbling and gratifying in a way.